Weak minds quit early, not because the road is impossible, but because resistance exposes who they really are. The moment pressure appears, something inside them whispers, asterisk, this shouldn't be this hard, asterisk. And that single thought becomes permission to retreat. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Difficulty is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you're exactly where growth begins. The weak interpret discomfort as danger. The strong interpret it as information. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack the capacity to endure sustained effort without immediate reward. They want progress to feel good. They want validation before mastery. They want confidence before competence, but life doesn't work that way. Life demands that you carry responsibility long before you feel ready, and it watches carefully to see whether you'll collapse under that weight or stand upright and grow stronger beneath it. When challenges arise, weak minds externalize the problem. They blame circumstances, timing, other people, or bad luck. Strong minds look inward and ask a far more dangerous question. Asterisk, what must I become to handle this? Asterisk, that question changes everything. It shifts you from being a victim of conditions to an architect of character. And character, not comfort, is the true foundation of success. Quitting early is seductive because it offers immediate relief. It promises safety, rest, and the illusion of control, but it also extracts a brutal long-term cost. Every time you quit, you train yourself to distrust your own resilience. You teach your nervous system that pressure equals escape. Over time, you become smaller, not because the world defeated you, but because you surrendered before discovering how strong you could have been. Strength is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's built quietly in moments no one applauds. It's built when you show up exhausted and still do the work. When you tell the truth even though it costs you socially. When you hold the line while chaos presses against you. Weak minds run from these moments. Strong minds understand that these moments are the curriculum. And let's be honest, discipline is not glamorous. It's repetitive, it's boring, it's often lonely. That's why most people abandon it. They mistake novelty for progress and comfort for wisdom. But success doesn't reward enthusiasm, it rewards consistency. It doesn't care how inspired you feel today. It cares whether you return tomorrow. There's a paradox here that few people grasp. The more responsibility you accept, the more meaning you experience. Weak minds avoid responsibility because they fear failure. Strong minds accept it because they understand that meaning is forged through burden, not ease. Carrying something heavy doesn't break you if it's aligned with who you're becoming. It strengthens you. If you quit at the first sign of resistance, you never give your deeper self a chance to emerge. You never discover the part of you that can tolerate uncertainty, regulate fear, and move forward anyway. That part of you is not optional if you want success. It is essential, so when things get hard, and they will, don't ask how to escape. Ask how to endure intelligently. Ask how to stand taller under pressure instead of shrinking away from it. Because the world doesn't need more comfort, seekers. It rewards those who can suffer with purpose, and remember this. The moment you refuse to quit is the moment you stop being weak, and start becoming someone success can finally trust. Pain is the price of greatness, and there is no shortcut around it. Every meaningful pursuit exacts a toll, and the question is never whether you will suffer, but asterisk how asterisk and asterisk for what asterisk. People who drift through life trying to minimize pain end up paying a far higher cost later. Regret, resentment, and the quiet terror of unrealized potential. Greatness demands a different bargain. It asks you to accept voluntary hardship now, so you don't become crushed by involuntary suffering later. Most people misunderstand pain. They see it as evidence that something has gone wrong, but pain, properly understood, is feedback. It tells you that you are stretching beyond what is familiar. It marks the boundary between who you are and who you could be. If you retreat every time you feel that burn, you guarantee that your life will remain small. If you learn to stay present within it, to listen rather than panic, pain becomes a teacher instead of an enemy. There is a deep difference between meaningless suffering and meaningful suffering. Meaningless suffering feels chaotic and unfair because it has no direction. Meaningful suffering, on the other hand, is chosen. It is the pain of discipline, of honesty, of responsibility. It is the discomfort of telling the truth when silence would be easier, of waking up early when your body begs for comfort, of carrying obligations that stretch you beyond convenience. That kind of pain organizes your life. It gives structure to your effort and dignity to your struggle. Weak minds run from pain because they mistake avoidance for intelligence. But avoidance doesn't eliminate pain, it delays it and compounds it. What you refuse to confront today returns tomorrow with interest. The anxiety you won't face becomes the depression you can't escape. The effort you won't invest becomes the crisis you can't manage. Greatness requires the courage to look pain in the eye and say, asterisk, you will not dictate the direction of my life. Asterisk, and here's the paradox. The more meaning you attach to your suffering, the more bearable it becomes. When pain is tied to a purpose larger than comfort, it transforms. It becomes tolerable. Sometimes it even becomes noble. You can endure far more than you think when you know asterisk why asterisk you are enduring it. That is why people can survive extraordinary hardship when their aim is clear and collapse under minor inconvenience when it is not. Greatness is not built in moments of triumph. It is built in moments of strain. It is built when progress is slow and invisible, when no one is watching, when quitting would be rational but staying would be courageous. Pain in those moments is not a sign of weakness. It is proof that you are paying the price most people refuse to pay. If you want a life that feels significant, you must be willing to shoulder weight. Comfort cannot be the highest value because comfort demands that you stay exactly as you are. Growth demands sacrifice. Transformation demands discomfort, and the people who reach the top are not those who avoided pain, but those who learn to carry it without becoming bitter or broken. So don't curse the pain when it arrives. Ask instead what it is shaping you into, because greatness does not come cheaply, and the cost is always paid in discomfort, and only those willing to pay it in full ever truly earn the right to stand at the top. Excuses are for the average because excuses are the language of avoidance dressed up as explanation. They sound reasonable, even intelligent at times, but their true function is far less noble. An excuse exists to protect you from the discomfort of responsibility. It gives you a story you can live with while quietly abandoning the work required to change your life. And the danger is this: the more articulate your excuses become, the more convincing they sound, not just to others, but to you. Average lives are built on perfectly reasonable justifications. The timing wasn't right. The system is unfair. I didn't have the same opportunities. I would have tried harder if someone had supported me. Each of these statements may contain a grain of truth, but truth without responsibility is sterile. It produces nothing. The world does not reward explanations. It rewards results, and results only come when you stop asking who's at fault and start asking what's required. The moment you make an excuse, you trade power for comfort. You tell yourself that the problem lies outside your control, which feels relieving in the short term, but that relief is purchased with helplessness. If it's not your responsibility, then it's not your problem to solve. And if it's not your problem to solve, you remain stuck exactly where you are. That is the hidden trap of excuse making. It soothes you today while quietly stealing your future. Strong people speak a different language. When something goes wrong, they don't rush to defend themselves. They don't immediately look for a narrative that makes them innocent. They ask a far more difficult question. Asterisk, what part of this belongs to me? Asterisk, that question is heavy because it demands honesty, but it is also liberating because whatever belongs to you is something you can improve. There is a maturity that comes when you realize that life doesn't care about your reasons. It cares about your actions. You can explain failure endlessly, and the explanation may even be correct, but correctness does not equal progress. Progress comes when you accept that regardless of how unfair the situation is, it is still your responsibility to respond to it properly. That is not cruelty, that is adulthood. Excuses flourish when standards are low. When you don't expect much from yourself, you don't need to rise. But when your standards are high, excuses collapse under their own weight. You can't simultaneously demand excellence and indulge in justification. One cancels the other. Excellence requires ownership, and ownership requires the humility to admit where you fell short without immediately shielding your ego. And here's the harsh reality. The world is full of people who are capable, intelligent, and even gifted, yet permanently average because they refuse to let go of their excuses. They mistake understanding their limitations for being defined by them. But understanding is only the beginning. What matters is what you do after you understand. When you abandon excuses, something remarkable happens. Your focus shifts from defending your identity to improving your competence. You stop asking for permission and start building capacity. You stop waiting for conditions to change and begin changing yourself. That shift is uncomfortable because it removes all hiding places, but it is also the moment your life begins to move forward. So if you want more than an average life, drop the explanations, drop the justifications, drop the stories that make you feel better but keep you small. Because the day you stop making excuses is the day you stop negotiating with mediocrity and start demanding greatness from yourself. Discipline beats motivation because motivation is fleeting, unreliable, and often dishonest. It arrives in bursts, fueled by emotion, novelty, or external validation, and disappears the moment conditions become uncomfortable. People wait for it as if it were a moral force, believing that once they feel ready, action will naturally follow, but feelings are poor masters. They change with sleep, weather, mood, and circumstance. If your progress depends on how inspired you feel, your life will be governed by randomness. Discipline, on the other hand, is not interested in how you feel. It is quiet, structured, and sometimes painfully unromantic. Discipline asks a single question each day, * what must be done regardless of mood, * that question is the backbone of competence. It removes negotiation from the process. There is no debate, no internal bargaining, no waiting for the perfect moment. The work gets done because it has been decided in advance that it matters. Motivation often seduces people into starting strong and finishing weak. They announce big plans, feel energized for a week, and then vanish when the initial excitement fades. Discipline does the opposite. It starts modestly, even uncomfortably, and builds slowly through repetition. It understands that mastery is not the result of heroic effort once in a while, but of ordinary effort applied consistently over time. There is a form of self-respect that emerges when you keep promises to yourself. Every disciplined action, no matter how small, strengthens your sense of personal authority. You begin to trust your own word. That trust compounds. Weak minds undermine themselves by constantly breaking commitments internally. Strong minds build stability by doing what they said they would do, even when no one is watching. Discipline also protects you from chaos. Life is unpredictable. Emotions fluctuate. Circumstances shift. But disciplined routines create order in the midst of uncertainty. They anchor you when things go wrong, when motivation collapses. And discipline remains. It carries you through grief, boredom, frustration, and fear without requiring you to be enthusiastic about any of it. Many people resist discipline because they associate it with punishment or restriction. But properly understood, discipline is not a cage, it is a framework for freedom. Without it, you are at the mercy of impulse and distraction. With it, you gain control over your time, your energy, and your trajectory. Discipline doesn't limit your life, it gives it shape, and here's the deeper truth. Disciplined people don't live less emotionally rich lives, they live more meaningful ones. By choosing responsibility over indulgence, they create space for genuine satisfaction. Pleasure gained without effort fades quickly. Satisfaction earned through discipline endures because it is tied to growth and competence. If you are waiting to feel motivated before you act, you are surrendering your future to chance. If instead you decide that certain actions are non-negotiable, regardless of internal resistance, you reclaim authority over your life. That decision, repeated daily, transforms potential into reality. So stop asking whether you feel like doing the work. Decide instead that the work will be done, because motivation may ignite the spark, but only discipline keeps the fire burning long enough to build something that lasts. You must outwork your feelings because feelings are immediate, persuasive, and often profoundly misleading. They present themselves as truth, but they are better understood as signals, temporary states shaped by biology, memory, and circumstance. If you treat them as commands, they will govern your behavior, and your life will shrink to the size of your emotional comfort zone. Strength begins the moment you recognize that how you feel is not the same as what you must do. There are days when you will feel tired before you've even begun, discouraged before the challenge appears, doubtful before the first step is taken. If action is postponed until confidence arrives, nothing meaningful will ever be built. Confidence is a byproduct of competence, and competence is earned through repeated effort in spite of uncertainty. Waiting to feel ready is a subtle form of avoidance that disguises itself as self-care. Modern culture encourages emotional indulgence, telling you that honoring your feelings is the highest virtue. But there is a difference between understanding your emotions and obeying them. Understanding allows you to regulate them. Obedience makes you their servant. Weak minds confuse the two and wonder why their lives feel unstable and reactive. Strong minds learn to listen without surrendering control. Feelings fluctuate. They rise and fall with sleep, nutrition, stress, and mood. Responsibility does not. Your obligations remain whether you feel inspired or depleted. When you align your actions with responsibility instead of emotion, you introduce consistency into your life. That consistency is the soil in which self-respect grows. You begin to see yourself as someone who can be relied upon, especially by yourself. Outworking your feelings does not mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It means refusing to let them veto your values. Fear doesn't get to decide whether you pursue what matters. Anxiety doesn't get to determine whether you speak the truth. Fatigue doesn't get to define the limits of your character. You acknowledge these states, and then you move forward anyway, intelligently and deliberately. There is a profound psychological shift that occurs when action leads emotion instead of the other way around. You discover that movement often changes how you feel. Momentum weakens anxiety. Progress dissolves doubt. Purpose cuts through emotional fog, but none of that happens if you remain still, waiting for your internal state to improve. People who succeed are not emotionally invulnerable. They experience fear, discouragement, and frustration like everyone else. The difference is that they do not grant those feelings authority over their behavior. They act in alignment with their aims, not their moods. Over time, this builds emotional resilience. You become less fragile, not because you feel less, but because feelings no longer derail you. When you allow emotions to dictate your effort, you live reactively. When you outwork them, you live intentionally. One path leads to regret, the other to meaning, and meaning is what sustains you when life becomes genuinely difficult, when comfort is no longer an option. So the next time your feelings tell you to stop, to delay, to retreat, listen carefully, and then do the work anyway, because mastery is built by those who move forward in spite of their emotions, and the person who outworks their feelings is the person who ultimately outgrows them. Only the relentless survive, because life is not designed to reward intention. It rewards persistence. Many people begin the journey with excitement, ambition, and a sense of possibility. Very few remain when the novelty fades and the work becomes heavy. What separates those who endure from those who disappear is not intelligence, luck, or even talent, but the willingness to continue when progress is slow, invisible, or painful. Relentlessness is often misunderstood as aggression or obsession, but at its core, it is steadiness under pressure. It is the refusal to abandon a meaningful aim simply because the path becomes difficult. Weak minds interpret obstacles as evidence that they are not meant to succeed. Relentless minds interpret obstacles as confirmation that the pursuit is real. Resistance is not a sign to stop. It is proof that something valuable is at stake. There will be moments when you feel as though nothing is working, when effort seems disconnected from outcome. These moments are the great filter. Most people retreat here, telling themselves a story about changing direction or being realistic. But what they are often doing is protecting themselves from the discomfort of sustained effort without immediate reward. The relentless understand something crucial. Progress is often happening beneath the surface, invisible until it suddenly isn't. Relentlessness does not mean ignoring reality or charging blindly forward. It means adapting without quitting. It means adjusting your strategy while keeping your aim intact. Failure is not fatal unless you allow it to redefine your identity. The relentless use failure as information. They study it, learn from it, and return sharper, not defeated. This kind of endurance requires a deep commitment to meaning. If your goal is shallow, status, applause, comfort, you will abandon it the moment it becomes inconvenient. But if your aim is rooted in responsibility, growth, and contribution, you will find the strength to persist even when enthusiasm disappears. Meaning is the fuel that keeps relentlessness alive when motivation has long burned out. Life will test you repeatedly. It will apply pressure not once, but again and again, each time asking the same question. Asterisk, are you serious? Asterisk, each setback is an invitation to walk away. Each difficulty offers a perfectly reasonable excuse to stop. And yet, those who survive are the ones who refuse to accept the invitation. They stay, they continue, they endure. Relentlessness is not dramatic. It doesn't always look heroic. Often it looks like quiet consistency, like showing up when no one expects you to, like doing the work long after recognition has faded. It is unglamorous and exhausting, which is precisely why it works. Most people are unwilling to sustain effort without applause. Over time, relentlessness compounds. Small actions, repeated daily, build an unbreakable foundation. You become someone who cannot be easily shaken, not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. And eventually, the world begins to yield not out of kindness, but out of respect for your refusal to leave. So understand this clearly. Success does not belong to the gifted, the lucky, or the loud. It belongs to those who stay in the fight when quitting would be understandable, because in the end, life doesn't reward brilliance. It rewards those who simply refuse to stop. Success is not for the weak, because weakness is not a lack of ability. It is a refusal to endure. Throughout this journey, one truth becomes unavoidable. Every meaningful life is built through struggle that is willingly accepted, responsibility that is consciously carried, and effort that continues long after emotion fades. Weak minds quit early. Strong minds stay. Weak minds avoid pain. Strong minds transform it into progress. Weak minds hide behind excuses. Strong minds confront themselves honestly. Weak minds wait to feel motivated. Strong minds rely on discipline. Weak minds are ruled by emotions. Strong minds act in spite of them, and in the end, only the relentless remain standing. This is not a message of cruelty. It is a message of respect. It assumes that you are capable of far more than you've been told. It assumes that within you exists a version of yourself that can tolerate discomfort, carry weight, and move forward even when the path is unclear. That version does not emerge through comfort. It is forged through effort, responsibility, and persistence. Life will not become easier. That is not the promise. The promise is something far better. You can become stronger. You can become disciplined. You can become someone who does not collapse under pressure, someone who does not retreat when things get hard, someone who does not negotiate with mediocrity. And when you become that person, your life gains structure, meaning, and direction. So choose your suffering wisely. Choose discipline over regret. Choose responsibility over excuses. Choose action over emotion. Stay when quitting feels justified. Stand when retreat feels tempting. Because the moment you decide to endure, to carry the weight and keep moving forward, you separate yourself from the average and step into the small group of people success is actually built for.